you watched my Legends tier guide for Apex Season 7, you know I consider Horizon to be the strongest legend. Now, she also happens to be the most fun to play. If you disagree with me, I promise this video will make you a believer. So brew a cuppa and hop on the Horizon train, because I'm saving you a seat with a bum warmer. Now, let's look at Horizon's abilities to start, and to make sure we understand the raw mechanics, and then we'll jump into all the tips and tricks. First off, her passive. She is not slowed nearly as much as other people when she falls. So I'm taking a big fall here and turn it into a nice slide, and I have very good speed the whole time. Okay, that's very simple passive. Now, for gravity lift. How does this work? If you're on it, you're going up at a consistent rate. Okay, why is this important? Consistent rate means if you're going up, it's easy to track people. Okay, you can strafe back and forth while on this thing. As long as you don't jump off, you're in complete control of your character. Once you jump off, you'll get an upwards speed boost as well as a sideways speed boost in the direction that you jumped off. Okay, let's take a look at that one more time. I jump off forward, I get an up and a speed boost. Okay, and let's do it up on this rock so you can see the upwards speed boost. Cooldown on this is very low, right? There we go. Okay, finally, her ultimate. Okay, this throws somewhat slow moving projectile. It lands. After a few seconds, it will pull anything close to it in, and it pulses, right? If I get away, it hits me again. I have a moment to get away, but if I'm still in, then it pulls me again, right? The ultimate recharges super quickly. As you can see, I'm already back to 25%, so you essentially always have this ultimate available to you. Okay, that's the raw mechanics of the character. What really makes her shine is her tactical ability and the fact that its cooldown is so low, right? I use it here. 12 seconds of cooldown. I think it's only 4 seconds that I don't have it. And this is with a gold helmet, of course. But without a gold helmet, I think it's up for 8 seconds, down for 7 seconds or something like that. You pretty much have it for more than half the fight. Okay, so first thing, obviously getting general map height. That's the obvious application of the ultimate. Now, it's very useful for flanking your opponents. If your opponents are sitting, let's say, up here, right? If you take height up on like further height, and your teammates are still down here, they have 2 angles to watch, right? So at any point you can drop and have shots on them from behind, or you can just use your height advantage and shoot them from up top. It's most applicable when people are sitting inside buildings. You can get to a door that they don't expect and shoot them from behind. Next, helping teammates reposition. You'll have the height, and this thing is a lot of the time, and this thing is spammable. When your teammates are in trouble, get them out. Throw a Q on them. Very hard to shoot people while they're AD strafing and moving up, right? You need to have pretty good tracking to do that.
Thanks, jump jets.
Okay, and then the speed boost pushes them in the direction they need to get out. Okay, huge advantage that Horizon provides for your team over something like a Pathfinder is that when you're using the Q to engage, you can't be easily hit. You're strafing. If you're on a zip line, you're very easy to shoot. Okay, next thing is this can be used for your whole team, right? So in a traditional fight, if you're fighting a team on high ground and you beam somebody, you can't push them, or if you do, they'll be fully meted up and ready, so they'll still have the high ground advantage and the fact that you're pushing them as an advantage, right? But with Horizon, you beam somebody, tell your team to come close to you, you guys all jump on this thing together, now you're in a 3v2 situation where you might even have the height on them if they didn't have the highest ground in the area. Okay, next tip, medding. Horizon, in my opinion, for escaping, her Q is better than Wraith's. Why? It's instant, right? You can med while on this Q. Basically AD strafing while moving up. Okay, so let's take a look at that again. I'm in a fight, I get beamed, throw it right below you, start to shield that. Once you get to the top, jump off. Right, I actually hit this ledge here. So let me do that again. Because the important thing is when you land, you can slide and turn it into a bunny hop because of her passive. Right? You grab a shield bat as well. And you'll maintain your speed, so you're very hard to hit. Usually you'll be able to jump to some high ground or some cover so that your opponents can't shoot you anyway. Just in case you can't, right? Pop the bat, you get near the top, land on the ground, turn it into a slide, and you're b-hopping. Okay. Use that to basically use meds when you don't have cover available in fights, or when you're in a firefight with someone that's somewhat close to you and getting behind cover wouldn't give you the time that you need to use your med in the first place. Okay. Next tip. You can shoot people very well while you're on this thing, right? There's two things that you need to understand mechanically about shooting on the Horizon Q. While you're standing on this, you can shoot with or rising. You can shoot with perfect accuracy. Once you jump off, your accuracy is very bad, right? The bullets don't go where you want. So if somebody's like hiding behind this rock, you can take full height on them. Or if you just want to shoot people while coming up, you can do that too, right? Very hard for them to shoot you while you're rising. The fact that your muscle memory is built and prepared for this firefight, you're going to do a lot more damage to your opponent than they're going to do you. They're behind this rock, right? And you're far away. Oh, suddenly, okay. I have an angle on this guy. They need to move. Okay. Next tip, saving down teammates. Now, let's say you're in a firefight with your team and at least 2 other teams. And one of your teammate gets caught out in the open, let's say around, this dummy's area, and you guys have cover behind a ledge like this. You throw your Q, right? They crawl onto the Q like this. Let's say I'm a knocked body. They crawl onto the Q, and now they're out, right? There's 2 teams looking at them. If you don't immediately get them out, they're likely to get thirsted. Another way to save the teammate is with a Wraith portal. But this thing is always available and the cooldown will come back right away. It's also useful if you're in a situation where you're like in a States on Olympus, for example. There's some high ground, your opponent can't quickly get to high ground. Just give your knocked teammate some high ground and then you can res them up above. Okay. Another thing that the Q is very useful for, the anti-grav, is zoning your opponents. Okay, if you're fighting in a building and there's a door or a double door, because this thing is wide enough, let's say this is roughly the size of a double door, you throw your Q on the entrance, your opponents cannot enter. They try to and they'll be pushed above where the doors are, so you completely zoned your opponents. They need to go around and find the next closest path in. This can give you time to med. So Horizon really controls how you engage with your opponents. You're really fighting on your terms in these fights. Okay, what that means is you're going to be controlling the pace of the fight, how much you can med, how much your teammates can med, the position of you and your teammates, as well as what distance from your opponents are you fighting. Okay, and this brings us to the next tip, which is optimal weapon loadout for Horizon. Okay, just on the basis of all of her abilities, you want a close range gun, ideally a shotgun, and ideally the Mastiff. You can get up in people's faces very easily with this legend, right? you control how close you are. And the Massive is really shining in this situation. So even if you're playing a game where there's not going to be a lot of teams near the final circle, you can still create a lot of close range engagements with Horizon, right? See somebody, it's kind of a middle range fight, right? Let's say they're on my ping back there. Okay, they take a sec to reload, you pop in, and you close the gap very quickly without too much risk. Okay, the other gun you're gonna want is a gun that's good at medium to long range, and then you're strong in every single scenario. So ideally this is something like a Hemlock or a 301 or a Bolt, something that's good at medium and long ranges. Okay, reason for this is, as we talked about, for maximum versatility, you want to be relevant in as many scenarios as possible, right? But also, you have angles on people even if they're far away from you, right? And so you want to be able to utilize that to your most advantage, and you can do that with the guns that I mentioned. Not to mention, if you're doing this with an R9, it's very hard to hit your shots, but the other guns I mentioned, you're in good shape. Okay, so another use for the tactical ability, which is very useful, is mind games, right? If your opponent's got some sort of high ground on you and some weird angle that they're not expecting, if you can climb or wall bounce up to a location, you can surprise peek them, right? So let's say you're fighting an opponent, they're on some slightly higher ground. There's not the best example here. I don't know, let's say they're up there, right? And you're down here, and they're looking at you from height. You throw your Q on that side, right? You climb up here, you go up the steps. They're watching this, they're expecting you to come up, right? So this is creating you a chance to get the drop on your opponent rather than the other way around. Okay. Let's talk about her ultimate a little bit. Admittedly, this is a situational ultimate, but it does have a fair amount of applications, and it can be incredibly good in the right situations. So, inventory, we talked about the guns that you want with Horizon as an optimal loadout. You always want to be carrying 2 or more arc stars, okay? Because these combo very well with the ultimate. Now, there's 3 main ways to use her ultimate, and that is for initiation in fights, to zone people, or for defense for escape, right? If you've got a narrow path between you and your opponent, you drop the ultimate between you and the opponent. Let's say it's like, you know, in a corridor like this, your opponents are going to have a bad time pushing through the ult, right? You put the ult, you put 1 nade, team's getting away, right? So you're giving yourself some breathing room if you find yourself in a bad situation. Initiation. There's a lot of ways to do this, but in general, there's 2 main ways to do it, right? Whether you're on the ground or you're queuing up to get the maximum, right? You can see when you use your Q, you have a very good picture of where everybody is, where all your opponent's positions are, where's the best place to put your ult. And generally the goal of this in the initiation is just to catch one opponent off with an arc star, right? Then they're slowed, they're cracked, you're easily going to be able to pick them off, and you just turn that fight into a 3v2 instead of a 3v3. Right, so in general, you want to take height for your ult, throw 1 or 2 arc stars at the ults, and then finish off the opponent that got hit. Okay. Then there's the other way around, which is actually very convenient. When you're fighting an opponent that's in a building, this is where the ult really shines. If the building is of size where the opponents cannot escape the ultimates, because the ultimate's AoE range is just as big as the building size, they're in some deep trouble. Okay, you're going to face a lot of situations where you've got 1 or 2 or maybe all 3 of your opponents that are in a building. They don't really want to peek you, and there's a door around. Well, what do? You throw the arc, okay? Your opponents run to the side of the room where there's no arc. They're safe. You open the door, you throw the arc, then you throw your ultimate in, okay? Your opponents get sucked into the Arc Star, and you have a very decisive advantage in that fight. So it's not always about using the ultimate first and then the Arc Stars. Sometimes you can reverse the order. Okay, so now let's jump into some clips, just kind of showcasing Horizon's power. I've got other videos on this if you really want to see or get in action, but we'll voice over a few specific scenarios. Okay, so in this clip right here, I give a cue to my teammate to reposition to get to us, right? Okay, then we have a standard kill on the opponent. We know that there's likely more around, and we need to keep moving. And in fact here, we see more, so we use our Q to close the gap between our opponent and make ourselves hard to shoot. In this clip here, essentially we take a pretty normal fight to start, right? We rip a guy right here, and we want to finish him off. We put a Q because we're facing a full squad, and we want to mind game going up, and instead we go to the side and use our hip fire to finish off a weak person. Finally, last one comes running in, and we're able to clean up. So this clip here, we used our Q to get hide on our opponents, and then, as we talked about before, we flank one. So now we're in a 3v2 scenario. We drop on our opponents, which we know where they are now because we've cleared the building, and we're able to clean up the fight.
Oh my god, that squad.
So here, we notice that our opponent has white armor, and we want to close the gap to push them. Normally this would be very hard to do, but since we're Horizon, we can get up quickly. If we were to try to climb there without Horizon, our opponents would have a very good window to rip us, and that would be a dicey fight. But the way we go up, we close the gap, we do our push, and we also leave something for our teammates to join us on height if they so choose.
This one's coming behind us, we gotta finish quick.
Yeah, knocked one.
We're with you.
Okay.
Hey, good shit.
We're going to recap again all the tips, and then we'll reiterate why she's so strong. So this is really get this in your brain, get the max value out of this video. Number 1, use a Q to get general map height. Number 2, flank your opponents using the height that you've now achieved. Help your teammates reposition by throwing them the Q. It's got a long range, you can throw it where you want. Number 4, full push teams on high ground. When you rip people, get that fight done. Avoid the third party. Finish the fight quickly. Number 5, use your Q to get out of sticky situations and use free batteries and other meds. Number 6, create high grounds for yourself and shoot people from on that high ground. Number 7, save down teammates. Your teammates down in the open, throw the Q on them, boom, they're immediately out. It's much faster than Wraithport. Number 8, zone people away. Control where your opponents can come at you, lock doors and other such things with the Q and with the ultimate. And finally, use your Q liberally to play mind games on your opponents. You don't always need to take the gravity lift. Get the drop on them, do what they don't expect. With your ultimate, initiate fights, get that Arc Star, hit somebody, create a 2v3 situation. Use it for zoning, use it to move people from behind cover, especially when you're out of nades, and buy yourself and your team some time when you need to escape. Use the ultimate liberally, it's also got such a low cooldown. Find yourself the best weapon loadout as mentioned. Now let's recap some of her strengths. She's so versatile, she controls the fights, she really controls the pace of the fights all game. She avoids your teams getting third-partied because you can get in the face of the opponents so quickly. You can move around the map in straight lines. Pythagorean theorem kids. Pythagorean theorem kids. I can't even pronounce it. It's important. Straight lines are faster than going around. Okay. It's really that simple. She's incredible. So get those high damage games. Get those high kill games. Have a lot of fun. But most importantly, get yourself a seat with a bum warmer.